They didn't come a roar or warning. They came like a pulse in the void, so sudden and so wrong that even the stars seemed to recoil. It started on an unremarkable sweep across the galactic rim. A Zalari patrol ship, the Astral Watcher, drifting through the cold dark, its crew lulled into routine by years of quiet. Their scanners painted the usual tapestry. Drifting rock fields, dust clouds, the faint echoes of distant quasars. Nothing unusual. Nothing that deserved a second glance. Then the anomaly appeared. At first, it was just a flicker in the data, a single, jagged spike where only silence should have been. Technicians frowned, recalibrated, blamed cosmic rays. But the spike grew. Within seconds, it blossomed into a surge of energy so vast it warped local gravity fields, bending light into strange, swirling arcs. Readouts turned red. Alerts cascaded to the bridge like a flood. The crew felt it even before the data confirmed it. Something was out there, something massive and impossibly close. Cold realization swept through the command deck. Conversations cut short, hearts pounded, and the quiet confidence of routine gave way to raw instinct. Find it, name it, classify it, or prepare to flee. The captain ordered a full scan. Beams of exotic particles swept the dark, chasing the shape hidden beyond sensor fog. And there it was, a silhouette rising from nothingness, vast and deliberate, too symmetrical to be natural. The anomaly wasn't an echo or error. It was a fleet, an unknown fleet. Rhythm built, curiosity sharpened. What they saw next made even the oldest veterans go silent. These were no battered pirate ships, no derelict relics drifting through space. Before them stood warships, huge, angular, bristling with weapons whose power signatures dwarfed anything in Zalari archives. Their hulls shimmered with alien alloys, absorbing the scan pulses rather than reflecting them, and each ship moved with unity that spoke of frightening discipline. As the data streamed in, fear took shape, gravimetric readings off the scale, power cores running at densities the Zalari believed impossible, and something stranger still, a subtle field that rippled around the fleet, scrambling recognition software and corrupting threat classification modules. Technicians, hands trembling, watched as the fleet advanced without firing, without hailing, as if daring the watchers to blink first. The realization dawns, adding tension. Rumors broke across comm channels faster than any command could silence them. Some whispered it was an old empire reborn. Others insisted these ships must be constructs of ancient builders, finally stirring after millennia. But deep down, every soul aboard the Astral Watcher knew the truth, unspoken but undeniable. These were human warships. And they weren't drifting. They were coming. For centuries, the Zalari had known of humanity only through scraps. Lost probes, intercepted transmissions, ancient archive whispers about a defiant species that preferred isolation to submission. But no report ever hinted at this. The scale, the raw technological force, the effortless suppression of Zalari sensors. It was like staring at thunder before the lightning struck, building narrative energy, drawing the listener in. Across the ship, every console beeped urgent warnings. Defensive systems flickered online, but targeting solutions failed to lock. Every sweep from the sensors came back broken, ghost images dancing between real signatures. Engineers recalibrated in desperation, but the readings defied logic. The human ships weren't cloaked in the traditional sense. They bent local reality around them, turning advanced detection into a guessing game. From the captain's chair, the view on the main screen was almost worse than the data. Dozens of Titanic vessels gliding forward in a perfect arrowhead, hull plating blacker than the void itself, broken only by occasional red sigils whose meaning no Zalari linguist could guess. And at the center of the formation, a flagship so large its outline seemed to distort distance itself, like a mountain drifting through space. The bridge crew felt their collective breath catch. They weren't just witnessing new ships. They were witnessing a statement of power. Humanity had not come to hide. Rising stakes, blending wonder and dread. Someone whispered what everyone thought, but dared not voice. What do they want? No answer came. The human fleet neither transmitted nor responded to the Zalari hails. Their silence was heavier than words, a silence that pressed against the bones, a silence that felt like judgment. Even veteran officers who had faced pirate armadas and frontier rebellions felt sweat on their brows. This was different. This was history turning its page. Still, duty demanded action. The Zalari captain ordered a tactical analysis, hoping to find weaknesses, hoping the show of force was only a bluff. But the data returned nothing useful. No power fluctuations, no exposed vending points, no predictable formation gaps. Instead, analysts found only redundancy, overlapping fields of defense, layered weapon arrays, and energy reserves so vast they could fight for weeks without pause. Hope slipped away as quickly as it came, closing the section with a chilling certainty. At last, the captain stood and spoke the words that would ripple across every ship on the rim. Record everything. Relay to command. Tell them the humans are here. Outside in the darkness, the fleet continued forward, silent, unstoppable, indifferent to the panic they left in their wake. The Zalari had sought the unknown. They found it, and what they discovered was worse than an enemy. It was a power too great to fight, too silent to negotiate, and too deliberate to misunderstand. For the first time in generations, the Watchers of the Galactic Rim felt something ancient and primal. Fear. And as the fleet slipped deeper into sensor range, that fear became certainty. Humanity had returned to the stars, not as explorers, but as warlords. They thought they'd seen everything the galaxy could throw at them. But as the shadows of the human warships grew across their screens, the Zalari realized they'd never truly known fear. Until now. Panic doesn't come all at once. It seeps in through flickering readouts, through the silent glances of seasoned officers who'd fought rebel uprisings and pirate kings, through the tension in a captain's voice as orders repeat without change. And on the bridge of the Astral Watcher, panic arrived silently but completely. The human fleet advanced, still refusing every hail, still ignoring every warning pulse shot across the void. And as they closed the gap, the unknown became terrifyingly detailed. First came the shape, warships shaped like spearheads, every angle purposeful, every plate forged with intent to kill. Then the scale, vessels so large that the nearest Zalari cruisers looked like insects beside a predator. But worst of all was the impossible calm with which the humans moved, drifting forward not with arrogance, but with a terrifying confidence born from power they didn't need to prove. The Zalari had expected noise, threats, a demand broadcast across the comms. Instead, they were met with silence so complete it roared in their ears. Flow tightening, building narrative tension. In the observation bay, junior officers crowded around auxiliary screens, hearts racing. They spoke in hurried whispers. What do they want? Why won't they speak? Are we under attack? But the warships didn't fire. They didn't even prime visible weapons. They simply drifted closer, hulls dark as the abyss, leaving sensor teams fighting error after error. Senior analysts pored over scan data, trying to understand. Energy readings spiked beyond charted limits, suggesting reactors denser than anything known. Hull plating scattered and absorbed scans, refusing to reveal weapon layouts. Every standard tactic to map threat vectors failed. Even direct visual data returned partial, like the ships themselves blurred the edges of understanding. Every failed scan felt like a slap in the face to the Zalari's belief in their supremacy of knowledge, transitioning from fear to professional duty. Despite rising fear, the captain held the bridge steady. Orders echoed through comms. Prepare full fleet scan. Deploy long-range probes. Maintain formation, do not show weakness. Across the fleet, Zalari vessels braced themselves in classic defensive alignments, shields humming, weapon turrets locked on. But deep down, every officer knew they were aiming blind. One lieutenant dared to say it out loud, voice shaking. "Sir, our weapons can't lock on. The threat matrices keep resetting." The captain turned slowly, voice a low growl to mask his own dread. Then watch them. Every move, every heat spike, every course correction. If they mean to strike, I want to know a second before they do. Introducing scale and mystery to grip the listener. Meanwhile, the data teams tried something new, overlaying old star charts, rumors, and centuries-old human broadcast fragments. Desperate, They searched for symbols matching the faint red sigils glowing on the human hulls. One fragment surfaced, an ancient human phrase distorted through radio noise. No quarter. Nobody spoke what they thought next. If that was truly what those symbols meant, the silence of the fleet wasn't hesitation. It was promise. Probes launched from Zalari ships zipped toward the humans, seeking readings. But as they closed the gap, each probe's feed ended in static. No explosion, no signal jam, just sudden blackout. The humans didn't swat them away. They simply erased them from existence. Technicians stared at blank screens, knuckles white, refusing to look away. Human fleet's silent dominance becomes narrative center. Every warship in that human formation moved as part of a single living organism. Micro-corrections of trajectory suggested advanced AI or perfect human crew coordination. But how? No known empire, not even the dreaded Zathri, had mastered such seamless unity between dozens of ships. Engineers speculated wildly. Was it direct neural control? Quantum link command relays? Or had humans simply advanced so far they'd left guesswork behind? In the strategy room, Zalari tacticians watched simulation after simulation, all ending the same way. Any Zalari strike force would be destroyed within moments. The models predicted crushing defeat, not by overwhelming numbers, but by terrifying efficiency. And still, the human fleet advanced, shifting tone from shock to cold, calculating dread. In the darkness of space, the distance between curiosity and fear is measured in seconds. And as those seconds stretched on, the Zalari crews felt something deeper, a sense that they weren't facing an enemy to fight but a power to survive. They'd thought of humanity as a fragmented, stubborn species, hidden behind outdated colonies and dying relics. But the truth now stood clear before them. Humanity had been building, and building not to join but to dominate. A silent message burned through every hull plate, every maneuver, every vanished probe. You see us now. Remember what you saw. Tell the others. Closing with an unskippable hook into next section. When the captain finally spoke to his crew, voice cold as vacuum, every word carried the weight of what they'd witnessed. Transmit everything to the council. They must understand. This is not a scouting force. This is a warning. And as the human fleet held its silent course, the Zalari ships floated, powerless to stop watching, their bravest warriors forced to accept a truth that echoed louder than sirens. They are not coming to negotiate. They are coming to be seen. In that moment, sensors still blinking with half-formed data, hearts pounding, and fear turning to awe, the Zalari fleet realized the universe had changed forever. And from that day forward, history would remember this moment by one chilling phrase. First contact, with the warships that left every sensor in total panic. It struck them not like a weapon, but like the truth, raw, absolute, and impossible to look away from. In that breathless instant when human warships emerged fully on every screen, even the proudest Zalari officers felt the ancient terror of the hunted. It wasn't chaos at first. It was something worse. Silence. A silence so deep it felt alive, stretching over the bridge of the Astral Watcher, wrapping cold fingers around every heart. Officers, technicians, and veterans who'd faced the worst the galaxy offered sat frozen, eyes locked on displays painted impossible. A dozen human dreadnoughts, black as dying stars, bristling with unknown weapons, flanked by escorts whose power signatures dwarf entire Zalari battle groups. They weren't anomalies anymore. They were undeniable. Real. Here. Then the panic began. The rhythm builds as panic spreads. Shields to full, barked the captain, voice cracking on the last syllable. Recalibrate threat analysis, shouted the tactical officer, fingers dancing over controls that suddenly felt inadequate. Comms. Are they saying anything? Anything at all? But the human fleet remained silent, drifting forward with serene, unstoppable certainty. Every Zalari system designed to classify danger, threat codex, AI prediction, tactical matrix, returned the same infuriating word. Unknown. Technicians pounded consoles in frustration as error lights painted the room in red and amber. Senior analysts, who had built careers on predicting every conceivable enemy move, could do nothing but stare at broken data feeds. It was like trying to read a message in a storm, and realizing the storm was a message. detailing what panic looks and feels like. Crew members traded terrified glances. One officer's hands trembled so hard she dropped her tablet. A junior ensign whispered to no one in particular, "They're not even trying to hide. They want us to see them." Another replied in a voice shaking with dread, "That's worse than hiding." Across the fleet, Zalari ships repositioned, trying to form defensive lines. But the formations felt hollow, lines drawn in dust against approaching thunder. Fear spread faster than orders could contain it. Even the bravest could feel it. The sudden certainty that nothing in the Zalari arsenal could matter here. A deeper dive into Bridges' rising desperation. The captain tried to steady his voice. Launch another probe. Find a weakness. Anything. A new probe shot forward, engines burning hot against the cold dark. Data streamed in for an instant, just enough to glimpse more terrifying detail. Hull plating that seemed to drink energy, emitters whose power density broke the probe's highest scale. And then blackout. Another probe vanished without trace. Tactical officers stared at the spot on the map where the probe should be, unwilling to speak the truth they all knew. The humans didn't even need to fire. The probe had simply ceased to exist, swallowed by some unseen field. "We don't even know what destroyed it," someone whispered. "Or if it was destroyed at all," replied another. Narrative rhythm keeps the listener hooked. Desperation grew into raw dread. Data teams layered scan on scan, trying to map the human ships, but the results felt like a bad dream. Outline shifting subtly, no clear weapon ports, energy signatures that seemed to flicker between plausible and impossible. Every second deep in the truth. These warships were beyond the Zalari's ability to fully see, let alone defeat. And the silence in the human fleet continued, a silence that felt deliberate, almost mocking. One veteran strategist, his voice hoarse, finally spoke what no one wanted to admit. "They could have fired by now." They're showing restraint or contempt. The captain's gaze locked on the main screen, the human flagship, now close enough to fill half the view. "Or both," he answered, adding weight and purpose. Bridge officers realized, almost together, this was a human's message. They hadn't come to open dialogue or to demand tribute. Their message was their presence, a declaration not of intent, but of reality. "We are here. We are powerful, and you cannot stop us." Fear on the bridge changed shape, from panic at the unknown to awe at something greater. The humans were not another empire to be measured and classified. They were a force beyond the Zalari's frameworks of power. Building narrative climax within this section. Across other Zalari ships, similar scenes played out. On the Defender of Dawn, an experienced Commodore watched their tactical displays melt into static as the human ship's field scrambled sensors. On the Silent Gaze, an engineer whispered a prayer in a language older than the stars, knowing that prayer had nothing to do with salvation and everything to do with acknowledging helplessness. Fleet Command transmitted a single desperate order: maintain position, do not provoke. But the crew's raised on doctrines of strength. Doing nothing felt like drowning with open eyes. No skipping here. The listener stays glued. Yet the humans did nothing. No weapons locked. No energy spike suggestive of imminent firing. They moved like mountains drifting on a slow tide, indifferent to the panic they caused. Some on the bridge clung to hope. Maybe they're just passing through. But others felt a deeper dread. These warships didn't need to fire. Their mere approach shattered the Zalari's illusion of control. The humans didn't need to win a battle. They'd already won the war of perception. Ending this section with a chilling, memorable close. As the captain looked around, he saw it in every eye. Raw fear mixed with something dangerously close to reverence. The data screens, though scrambled, still burned with partial truths. Truths no one could unsee. The humans hadn't just surprised them. They had revealed the Zalari's deepest vulnerability. The arrogance that had kept them blind for too long. And as the human dreadnoughts glided silently forward, the captain understood what mattered most wasn't whether the humans would fire, but that, if they chose to, nothing the Zalari did could stop them. "Transmit everything to High Command," the captain ordered quietly. "They must know our age of certainty is over." The bridge fell silent once more, save for the soft, traitorous pulse of hearts that had seen power unimagined. And in that silence, Every soul aboard accepted a truth that echoed louder than sirens. The galaxy had not met the humans. It had met the force that would haunt its dreams. It wasn't what the humans did that terrified the Zalari most. It was what they didn't do. For endless minutes, the human fleet held position, silent, motionless, like obsidian statues cast against the stars. The galaxy had taught the Zalari to fear aggression, to prepare for sudden strikes, surprise maneuvers, the flash of energy weapons tearing through shields. But nothing in all the codices and doctrines warned them about an enemy that made its point through restraint. That was the brilliance and horror of humanity's message. They didn't need to fire to dominate. Their very presence turned the bravest Zalari hearts cold. A rhythm of slow dread and fascination. On the Astral Watcher's bridge, the captain stared at the main display until his eyes watered. Human warships floated there in perfect formation, dreadnoughts flanked by sleek escorts, all blacker than the void itself. Hull lines precise, every contour shaped not by ornament but by ruthless purpose. Each ship bore angular markings that glowed a subdued crimson, symbols older than any Zalari could interpret, symbols that suggested unity and warning. No lights flashed, no weapons flared. Instead, the silence spoke a language more fluent than words. See what we built. Know your place. Deepening immersion with sensory detail and tension. In the observation gallery, junior officers pressed close to reinforced glass, breath fogging the pain. Even through layers of armor and energy shielding, they swore they could feel something radiating from the human fleet. A gravitational weight, a pressure in the chest that made every heartbeat louder. Some called it raw power. Others whispered of ancient terror coded deep in every thinking species. The instinct to bow before what cannot be defeated. Technicians in sensor bays worked desperately to pierce the shroud. Readings returned half-formed, skipping, as though reality itself bent around the human hulls. Some scans revealed towering heat blooms in the ship's cores, reactors so dense they distorted local gravity. Others showed brief flashes of internal structure before dissolving into static. Nose can offer the full truth, only glimpses that deepen the mystery. The strategic minds wrestle with what they see. In the ship's strategic center, holographic projections painted the human fleet in ghostly outlines. Admirals and senior analysts circled them, pointing at nodes of energy, theorizing aloud. Mass dampeners? One guessed. Some new variant of phase armor? Wondered another. Or something beyond even our language. The oldest whispered. Each hypothesis collapsed under its own weight. The fleet formations were too perfect, the energy readings too alien, the sheer technological scale far beyond anything charted. The conclusion settled over the room. Heavy as lead, the humans weren't just ahead. They were generations ahead. Narrative flow shifts to emotional impact. Panic, so fierce minutes before, now shifted into stunned awe. The Zalari were not a timid race. They conquered systems, brokered peace through power, and seen 100 would-be threats fall. But this was different. This was like standing at the edge of an abyss and finding it looking back. What chilled them wasn't the threat of destruction, but the certainty that, had the humans wanted war, the fight would have ended before it began. Instead, the humans chose to be seen. That choice changed everything. Small human gestures amplified the dread. Then, without a single transmission, the human fleet began to adjust formation, not retreating, not attacking, simply shifting. Dreadnoughts parting slightly, escorts drifting outward like silent sentinels. The motion was smooth, deliberate, so coordinated it felt choreographed. Observers leaned forward, hearts racing. Was this the beginning of an assault? Yet no weapons powered up, no shields flared to life. Instead, the Zalari realized the truth. The humans weren't forming a strike pattern. They were revealing themselves more clearly. An intentional act, like a master unsheathing a blade just enough to show the edge, adding cultural and historical resonance. Centuries of Zalari belief cracked in that moment. Their historians had always labeled humanity a curious but backward species, fractured and impulsive. But the ships drifting before them, silent, disciplined, impossibly advanced, told a different story. A story of unity forged not by empire but by necessity, of worlds brought together not by conquest but by shared will. Legend spoke of an age when humanity warred endlessly with itself, nearly burned itself into extinction, then vanished into isolation. But now the Zalari saw what that silence had hidden. While the galaxy watched other rising powers, humans had built these giant engines of deterrence and dominance, perfected in secret. Dialogue brings immediacy and intimacy. A junior officer, voice barely above a whisper, "Sir, why aren't they saying anything?" The captain's reply came quiet, heavy with realization. They don't have to. The message is their presence. Words would only cheapen it. The bridge fell silent again, each soul weighing what that meant. The Zalari had come expecting a rival to measure, to threaten, perhaps to fight. Instead, they'd met a reality so unanswerable that even aggression felt meaningless. Closing the section with a compelling narrative cliffhanger. Finally, the human flagship, vast beyond comprehension, crowned with strange crimson symbols, turned slightly, not away, not fully toward them, but enough to suggest acknowledgement. A gesture, simple yet deliberate, like a silent salute or a warning. Then, as abruptly as they'd appeared, the human ships began to drift backward, engines humming softly, vanishing into the darkness from which they'd come, not fleeing, retiring, as though their demonstration was complete. And on every Zalari bridge, every observer felt the same shiver of realization. The humans had shown restraint, not weakness, power so great that it chose not to crush its lesser rivals. And by leaving, they spoke louder than 1,000 declarations. Remember us, remember what you saw, and understand that we let you live to tell it. In the shadowed silence that followed, only one truth remained. The Zalari hadn't just discovered a threat. They glimpsed the edge of force that could change the balance of the galaxy forever. And though the humans had vanished into the void, the echo of their silent message burned brighter than any star. The human warships had vanished into the void, but the fear they left behind burned brighter than 1,000 suns. And in the cold silence that followed, the Zalari fleet sat adrift, haunted by the memory of what they had seen. Ships so massive they bent gravity around them, hulls so black they swallowed light, and a silence so deliberate it spoke louder than any broadcasted threat. Across the command deck of the Astral Watcher, the air felt thicker somehow, as if the emptiness outside had seeped in. Consoles flickered with half-corrupted scans, and the smell of ozone from overworked systems clung to every surface. The bridge crew, once confident masters of exploration and defense, now moved with the quiet reverence of those who had glimpsed something greater than themselves. From shock to reckoning, data officers replayed the encounter on endless loops. Each time they watched, new details revealed themselves, and each time the same truth grew clearer. Humanity's silence wasn't ignorance. It was choice, and choice meant control. The humans had written a message across the stars, not with words, but with presence. A young ensign, voice low with awe and fear, summed it up in a single breath. They let us see them. They wanted us to know. Across the fleet, realization spreads. Other Zalari ships confirmed identical reports. Sensors scrambled. Probes vanished. Threat matrices collapsed under impossible readings. The war councils who had built strategies on numbers and formations now faced something that numbers couldn't contain. On the silent gaze, a strategist whispered over a secure channel. "We have no defense against this. We never even knew we needed one." His words traveled through encrypted relays to commanders and analysts light years away, echoing through halls of power where fear had rarely found home. Narrative rhythm keeps the listener leaning in. Fleet Command ordered every scrap of data transmitted back to the central archives. Partial scans, ghost images of energy signatures, fleeting glimpses of hull markings. Even the most corrupted fragment became priceless, evidence of the day the galaxy changed. Scholars, historians, and military analysts worked side by side, piecing together an incomplete mosaic. And in that patchwork of data, a single truth blazed like a warning beacon. Humanity had rejoined the galactic stage not as diplomats, but as warlords bearing silent ultimatums. The emotional impact deepens. For the Zalari, who had seen themselves as patient stewards of balance, this realization struck harder than any weapon could. It wasn't just a fear of defeat in battle. It was a dread of being irrelevant in a future suddenly shaped by an unseen hand. Some, driven by desperation, argued the humans might be persuaded, bribed, even threatened. But in every debate, the same argument killed hope. They didn't speak to us because they didn't need to. It was power beyond reason, beyond negotiation. The kind of power that redefined what it meant to be strong, adding texture and gravity to the story. In archives where data was normally sorted and stored without emotion, archivists felt chills recording these logs. Some clutched ancient symbols of faith. Others simply stared at the black screens that had failed to capture the human ships in full detail, as if afraid the silence might suddenly break into fire. Even veterans, warriors who had stood at the front of fleet engagements, felt the deck shudder under plasma volleys, heard the dying calls of allied ships, admitted in quiet tones that this was worse. They could have fought an enemy that roared and threatened, but how do you fight an enemy whose silence is a threat? A moment of reflection and chilling clarity. The captain of the Astral Watcher, a man whose career had been built on reading threats and weighing responses, understood now that the humans had already won something more important than territory. They had seized the galaxy's attention, its imagination, and its fear. Even if the humans never fired a shot, they had shown they could. And for every Zalari, every strategist, every race watching from hidden outposts, that unspoken power was enough to shatter centuries of certainty. Narrative builds toward a haunting, unforgettable image. In the strategic centers of the Zalari core worlds, great holomaps were updated. The blank regions beyond the known frontiers were no longer labeled merely as unexplored. Now they bore a single chilling annotation. Caution, human fleet activity possible. No fleet had claimed that space. No border had been drawn. But in every mind that mattered, that region of darkness had become the territory of silent giants. Closing with a final, unskippable reflection, an echo. When the last scrambled image faded from the Astral Watcher's main screen, the captain finally allowed himself to speak what no one else dared. We came to find an unknown. Instead, the unknown found us, and it watched us, knowing exactly what we would feel. In the days that followed, messages carried across subspace relays reached every Zalari world and beyond, to allies, to rivals, even to distant empires who barely knew the Zalari name. Each message told the same story. Aliens' first contact with human warships left their sensors in total panic. It wasn't just a headline. It was a warning, an echo across the stars. An empire built on silence. Ships built to be seen only when they chose to be seen, and a power so absolute it spoke most clearly when it spoke not at all. And though the humans had retreated back into the void, the galaxy would not soon forget the day they revealed themselves. The memory burned deeper than fear, etched into history itself. The moment the galaxy realized it wasn't ready, and perhaps would never be.